8. The Tree on the Hill.
Until now, we were listening to Zarathustra as he was making his discourses, but we don't know who else was listening. Presumably, he is still hanging around Pied Cow, making speeches, and some people listen. But we got no indication of how they take it. In the tree on the hill, we are finally meeting someone who is reacting to Zarathustra.
Zarathustra's eye had perceived that a certain youth avoided him, and as he walked alone one evening over the hill surrounding the town called the Pied Cow, behold, there found he the youth sitting leaning against a tree, and gazing with wearied look into the valley. Zarathustra thereupon laid hold of the tree beside which the youth sat, and spake thus, If I wished to shake this tree with my hands, I should not be able to do so. But the wind, which we see not, troubleth and bendeth it as it listeth. We are sorest bent and troubled by invisible hands.
So, it appears that Zarathustra has a young fan, but he is a troubled youth. Zarathustra runs into him one day, up on a hill looking down at human civilization, and opens conversation. The tree allegory is meant to show that he understands that the kid is troubled by matters of the spirit, not by things that can be seen by others.
Thereupon the youth arose disconcerted, and said, I hear Zarathustra, and just now was I thinking of him. Zarathustra answered, Why art thou frightened on that account? But it is the same with man as with the tree. The more he seeketh to rise into the height and light, the more vigorously do his roots struggle earthward, downward, into the dark and deep, into the evil. Yea, into the evil, cried the youth. How is it possible that thou hast discovered my soul? Zarathustra smiled and said, Many a soul one will never discover, unless one first invent it.
Zarathustra knows what plagues the kid's spirit, and he understands it because the youth is trying to walk the path that he already traveled. Zarathustra knows that as one tries to climb up and achieve greatness, they have to battle greater evil that awakens in them. Keeping up with the tree analogy, he says that the more the tree grows up into the skies of good, the more it has to extend its roots deeper into the ground of evil. And, apparently, this is exactly what the kid is dealing with.
Yea, into the evil, cried the youth once more. Thou saidst the truth, Zarathustra. I trust myself no longer, since I sought to rise into the height, and nobody trusteth me any longer. How doth that happen? I change too quickly. My today refuteth my yesterday. I often overleap the steps when I clamber. For so doing, none of the steps pardons me. When aloft, I find myself always alone. No one speaketh unto me. The frost of solitude maketh me tremble. What do I seek on the height? My contempt and my longing increase together. The higher I clamber, the more do I despise him who clambereth. What doth he seek on the height? How ashamed I am of my clambering and stumbling, how I mock at my violent panting, how I hate him who flieth, how tired I am on the height.
Following Zarathustra's lead, the kid rebelled against society to find his own way, create his own values. This led to freedom, but also to loneliness. And in his loneliness, the bad thoughts that we all suffer from, the bad thoughts that our friends can dispel with their warmth, take hold of him, with no one to dispel them. He started to feel self-doubt, and became contemptuous to what he has become. Zarathustra will now try to soothe these feelings and restore his self-respect, and we better pay attention, because the crisis the youth is going through is foreshadowing what Zarathustra himself will go through later on.
Here the youth was silent, and Zarathustra contemplated the tree beside which they stood, and spake thus, This tree standeth lonely here on the hills. It hath grown up high above man and beast. And if it wanted to speak, it would have none who could understand it. So high hath it grown. Now it waiteth and waiteth. For what doth it wait? It dwelleth too close to the seat of the clouds. It waiteth, perhaps, for the first lightning.
We are still with the tree analogy. Like the kid, the tree is lonely and stuck. It is waiting for something to happen to change the situation. Perhaps, Zarathustra suggests, It is waiting for a lightning.
When Zarathustra had said this, the youth called out with violent gestures, "Yea, Zarathustra, thou speakest the truth. My destruction I longed for when I desired to be on the height, and thou art the lightning for which I waited. Lo, what have I been since thou hast appeared amongst us? It is mine envy of thee that hath destroyed me." Thus spake the youth, and wept bitterly. Zarathustra, however, put his arm about him, and led the youth away with him.
It appears that the youth started his rebellion even before Zarathustra showed up. He was already feeling lonely and miserable, and Zarathustra, by showing him that individualism doesn't have to be miserable, made him feel like a failure. Thus, he acted like a lightning that destroyed what the kid was. Now he has to help him rebuild.
And when they had walked a while together, Zarathustra began to speak thus: "It rendeth my heart. Better than thy words express it, thine eyes tell me all thy danger. As yet thou art not free, thou still seekest freedom. Too unslept hath thy seeking made thee, and too wakeful. On the open height wouldst thou be, for the stars thirsteth thy soul, but thy bad impulses also thirst for freedom. Thy wild dogs want liberty. They bark for joy in their cellar when thy spirit endeavoureth to open all prison doors."
Zarathustra explains where the kid went wrong. As Zarathustra preached, he let the powers of his body free. But with that, he also let his bad impulses free. Then he became a slave to these impulses, and he is not really free.
"Still art thou a prisoner, it seemeth to me, who deviseth liberty for himself. Ah, sharp becometh the soul of such prisoners, but also deceitful and wicked. To purify himself is still necessary for the freedom of the spirit. Much of the prison and the mould still remaineth in him. Pure hath his eye still to become. Yea, I know thy danger, but by my love and hope I conjure thee, cast not thy love and hope away."
What can the kid do to liberate himself from the bad impulses? The first thing, says Zarathustra, is to not give up on his good impulses. He must hold on to his love and hope, for these are powers that will pull him up.
"Noble thou feelest thyself still, and noble others also feel thee still, though they bear thee a grudge and cast evil looks. Know this, that to everybody a noble one standeth in the way. Also to the good a noble one standeth in the way, and even when they call him a good man, they want thereby to put him aside. The new would the noble man create, and a new virtue. The old wanteth the good man, and that the old should be conserved. But it is not the danger of the noble man to turn a good man, but lest he should become a blusterer, a scoffer, or a destroyer."
Noblemen in 19th century Europe were held in contempt. The liberal order, lest we forget, rose in rebellion against feudalism, an order in which the aristocracy was in control. The noblemen were still around, trying to find their way in the new order, and many of them maintained their sense of superiority over the masses, which, of course, made them a thorn in the side of a society that aspired to progress towards equality, and they were despised for it. But not by Nietzsche. Nietzsche admired the aristocratic way of self-discipline and perfecting of manners, and maintaining one's unique individuality. The noblemen, for him, were role models. Zarathustra encourages the kid to not be ashamed of his noble spirit, and warns him that society will try to make him conform. However, he says, there is an even bigger danger than conforming. The danger is that he will be addicted to this position of a rebel, and delve in the pleasures of negating and destroying the values of conformed society, instead of focusing on developing his own values.
"Ah, I have known noble ones who lost their highest hope, and then they disparaged all high hopes. Then lived they shamelessly in temporary pleasures, and beyond the day had hardly an aim. Spirit is also voluptuousness, said they, then broke the wings of their spirit, and now it creepeth about, and defileth where it gnaweth."
When a nobleman, an individualist, loses their belief that they can create new ideals, a loftier existence, their life loses meaning. Zarathustra says that he has seen it happen, and that these noblemen then succumb to the pleasures of the flesh, and convince themselves that these pleasures are also worthy of a noble spirit. It led them to decay into a wretched existence.
Once they thought of becoming heroes, but sensualists are they now. A trouble and a terror is the hero to them. But by my love and hope I conjure thee, cast not away the hero in thy soul. Maintain wholly thy highest hope. Thus spake Zarathustra.
Zarathustra reminds the kid that he set on his path because he wanted to live a heroic life. He bids him to never give up on that hope. The question of how to overcome the bad impulses, which has been opened in this chapter, is not answered here. It is left for a future lecture.